So the tariffs are held off for at least 30 days, but this uncertainty is still causing problems for the Canadian business climate. Here to discuss this in more detail is Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley. Brian, welcome. So what says you about all this uncertainty in our Canadian-owned businesses?
This is the worst part of all of this. So, yeah, we've got a reprieve for at least 30 days, it says. So it could go longer. That still causes problems for companies that are trying to make decisions about where to place investments. I haven't heard of any investments canceled yet, but speaking to people across various industries, there are some on hold where people were going to maybe do an expansion or decide to, okay, we'll locate a plant here. Those are on hold while all of this is figured out. And I don't think that's going to change with this reprieve because, well, 30 days from now, he could come back and say, you know what? You haven't done enough. I'm going to put the tariffs in. And then beyond that, um, let's say that the federal government, whether it's under Justin Trudeau or whoever, is able to convince Trump that we're doing enough on the border. And he says, okay, you're not getting the 25% tariffs. Uh, Howard Lutnick, who is Trump's pick for Commerce Secretary, said before the Senate Commerce Committee last week that there are another batch of tariffs coming that will be sectoral. And so, that's one that probably oil will not be part of, energy will not be part of, but maybe Canadian beef is going to be on the list, maybe auto parts. These are things that, other things that we trade on a large scale with the Americans, and they might just say, yeah, we don't want that. Or, I mean, the big concern if you're a beef rancher in Alberta or pork producer in Quebec is country of origin labeling, which is a non-tariff barrier. So there's a lot of uncertainty going forward, and that puts the entire business climate in this country into question. Kind of what Donald Trump wants, though. He wants people to make the decision to build their business, to produce products in the United States, not have them in Canada and ship them down.
Yeah. I mean, it's just been such a volatile time, especially to be in the news. I mean, even late last week, we were hearing, oh, February 1st might be pushed back to March 1st. And then it was like, nope, that's not true. And then all of a sudden it was Tuesday and then yesterday. So all this last minute stuff. So how did this particular last minute reprieve come about, Brian?
So my understanding from speaking to people who do know is that Prime Minister Trudeau went onto the call with President Trump in the morning, just expecting that he was going to be told, you're getting slapped with tariffs, they're going ahead as planned. Remember, Trudeau said when he was questioned by a journalist, have you talked to Donald Trump about this? That was on Saturday night when he came out in response to Trump's announcement. And he admitted that he had not spoken to Donald Trump since the inauguration. That's not a good sign. Canadian Prime Minister should be able to get the American president on the phone pretty much any day of the week. We're supposed to have that tight of a relationship. Trudeau had obviously been trying, and Trump wasn't taking or returning his calls. So on Monday morning, they have a call. Trump starts saying, you have not done anything on the border. And Trudeau replies with, but we've briefed your people on our plan, the one that was released December 17th. They've spoken about it publicly. They agree to have another call. Trump had made it clear that Canada hadn't done enough. And so the prime minister and his team spent the rest of the day discussing with Trump and his team what needed to be done, and ended up coming up with the idea of a fentanyl czar. They quantified how many people, 10,000 people on the front lines. We still don't quite know what that is, but that's there. Another $200 million in spending, which of course has to be passed by Parliament, which isn't sitting. But he added enough to the package that Trump was willing to say, okay, you'll get the reprieve. Will it be enough going down the road? We don't know, but it got us the same 30-day reprieve that Mexico got.
Oh, so interesting. And I mean, here we have Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, who's been calling for a border czar, well, since last week, really. And instead, the government offers up a fentanyl czar at the last minute to get this reprieve, right? So a lot of people are saying that she's been really smart about this in her thinking from beginning. So what do you think, Brian? Does that show that Smith was right?
I think it does. And look, she was able to get energy down to 10%. If the tariffs had gone ahead, which of course they haven't, but everything else was going to get 25% energy. And I believe that did include electricity from Ontario and Quebec and British Columbia. That was only going to get 10%. So she did a lot of lobbying on that. And she came up with ideas like the borders are. That's
Yeah.
essentially what the fentanyl czar is going to be doing, dealing, well, actually, probably a bit more because
Mhm.
the fentanyl czar will be able to go in and deal with money laundering, which is a major issue. And Premier Smith has told me that fentanyl is a problem in Alberta, in British Columbia, and going across the border. So she has been very smart on this all along, despite being called a traitor and worse by some people in the Canadian media, the Eastern Canadian media establishment, being accused of standing with Donald Trump by Justin Trudeau. Not a very Team Canada approach from the guy who should be the captain of Team Canada, but isn't right now.
Oh, so interesting. Now, you mentioned earlier there, and you've also been writing that there are two distinct tariff threats on the horizon. And you mentioned the beef could be. So, can you maybe get into that a little bit more, unpack that more, or what else we should be sort of aware of or wary of?
Yeah, so even if we get past this 25% tariff, there will be sector by sector tariffs coming down the road. This is the report that Trump has asked for by April 1st. A lot of dates, and that just adds to the uncertainty that we were talking about earlier. So, look, the Americans want to use tariffs to realign global trade. This is the reason behind it. I know I keep hearing a lot of commentary that nobody knows why he wants to do this. They've been quite upfront. They've
Yeah.
spoken openly about it. There are papers written about it. They don't believe that global trade is balanced in favor of the United States anymore. And so, you know, China got its 10% across the board, but they want to look at other um, aspects of trade with countries like Canada and Mexico and say, is this proceeding properly? Is it happening according to our trade agreements? Are there problems? And if so, if they do find problems, they will most likely try to, um, balance that out in their view by using tariffs. So we have to be wary of that, and we have to be cognizant of that. We also have to be mindful of the trade irritants between the two countries. I keep comparing this to a marriage, and we're effectively married to the United States, and they are coming to us with problems. We have problems with them. Well, just like in a marriage, if you want it to last, you've got to be listening to your partner's problems. We got to be listening to theirs and then trying to find a way to uh, have a win-win. And far too often, we've just been saying, no, there's no problem, be quiet, ignore it. Well, in a marriage, that doesn't work too well. In a trading relationship, it won't work too well either. Trump is going to be looking to renegotiate uh, USMACA or Kuzma, whatever you want to call it. Is going to want to renegotiate that early. It's up for review in 2026. He's going to want to do it now. And if you look at his social media posts, he's already got his sights on things like banking, which he says Americans are treated unfairly by Canada on.
Interesting. I know this might not be your area of expertise, but you mentioned that Canada's got the same reprieve now that Mexico does. Do you know what Mexico has done at the southern border?
The big thing they offered was 10,000 troops, and that they're going to work harder with the Americans to try and stem the flow of people and drugs. Uh, you know, we've got our problems with those issues on the northern border. They're much, much bigger on the southern border
For
that the
sure.
United States has with Mexico. So President Sheinbaum said, yes, we will do this. She had not even announced retaliatory tariffs, is my understanding. She was waiting, putting forward her plan, and was able to get an off ramp or get a reprieve before we were. Not dissimilar from when Mexico was able to negotiate a new trade deal before Canada was, because we ended up being frozen out by the Americans because they didn't like the way we were negotiating. It's always, you never know what's going to happen with a character like Donald Trump, but you also have to be very careful about what you're doing, what you're saying, how you're conducting yourself, so that you don't end up on the wrong end of his wrath.
No, isn't that for sure? Now, Brian, Canada's ambassador to the United Nations, Bob Rae, was on Fox News last night, and not only could he not say the word oil, but he also said he stood by a 2017 op-ed that he wrote that was highly critical of Donald Trump. Now, does this show that, it might show that liberals don't know how to talk to right-wing America or Trump's America? I mean, I'd say he's definitely not speaking to the right audience on Fox with those talking points.
Well, look, when Prime Minister Trudeau went on American media, went to CNN, he talked to Jake Tapper.
Yeah.
Jake Tapper is a good journalist, but he's not well liked or respected by the Trump team.
Yeah.
Trudeau also spoke to Jen Psaki, who was formerly Biden's press secretary and is now with NBC. Those were the wrong people for him to speak to. Bob Rae is the first time I can think of seeing a liberal government official going on. Bob Rae, of course, used to be interim leader of the Liberal Party federally. It's the first time I've seen them going on Fox News. And when he was talking about the trade embargo, he should have been saying oil. Our trade imbalance is due to oil because you buy so much cheap oil from us. We sell it at a discount to you because we can't sell it anywhere else. John Baird, Stephen Harper's former foreign affairs minister, made those points on Fox yesterday, but Bob Rae couldn't. He talked about international rules-based order, which, quite frankly, the Trump team doesn't care about. So they really don't know how to talk to Trump's America. Danielle Smith and Doug Ford have been doing all the work on Fox, and you've got Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney and others going on CNN. Look, you got to speak to the audience that matters, not to your friends.
Yeah, no, funny. Meanwhile, conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has said that going forward, we need to reimagine our economy. So what does he envision, Brian?
Pipelines, expanding the natural resources sector, whether it's mining, oil, gas, potash. He wants to unleash the Canadian economy. Donald Trump is about to unleash the American economy. He's going to deregulate in a big way. And that, I think I said this to you last week, that is as big a threat to Canada and our economic future going forward as the tariffs are. If he deregulates in the way that he's talking about, lowers taxes in the way he's talking about, and we stay on our current path, that's going to be bad news. So Pierre Poilievre's talking about fast tracking pipeline construction and permits, the same with LNG export terminals, having an east-west pipeline again. He's not necessarily saying Energy East, because who knows if TransCanada, or TC Energy as they're now called, wants to bring that back. So he's talking about doing all the things that are the antithesis of what the liberals have been doing for the last while. But if we want to wean ourselves off the Americans and diversify trade, that's part of it. Oh, and by the way, he wants to tear down interprovincial trade barriers, such as differences in when trucks can move goods and what kind of first aid gear they have to have on them. All these little things that provinces have put into place as their own protectionist measures. Several people have been pointing out since all of this started, it's sometimes easier to trade with Belgium or the United States than it is between provinces.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Meanwhile, Liberals have that leadership race going on, and it looks like Mark Carney is their front runner. And he's promising to scrap one carbon tax, but replace it with something worse. So, Brian, what is a carbon border adjustment? What is this?
The carbon border adjustment, it's essentially a tariff on any imported good that comes from a country that doesn't have a climate plan Mark Carney likes. I thought we were supposed to be against tariffs. I thought we were trying to fight Donald Trump's tariffs. And here's Carney saying he'll bring this in. The United States is their biggest trading partner. That's not going to change no matter how much we diversify. They do not have a carbon tax. They did not have one under Biden, under Trump the first time, or under Obama. They do not have one. So they're going to face, if Mark Carney gets elected and follows through, we're going to be putting a tax on every imported good from the United States. What's that going to do? It'll make life more expensive. He also proposed that he would severely hike the industrial carbon tax. So he'll get rid of it for you and I, But he's going to, all those big polluters, they're going to pay big time now, though. And he was asked in an interview with CTV Atlantic, maybe you saw this clip, it was floating around a lot. Todd Battis said, well, wait a minute. Won't that drive up prices for consumers? It'll trickle down. He said, oh, no, it won't. You don't buy much steel these days anyway. This guy's supposed to be the smart economist in the room. And that was a really dumb thing to say. On the one hand, Carney's arguing against Trump's tariff, saying it will drive inflation. And on the other hand, he's saying his two new carbon taxes will be just fine for the economy. It is utterly ridiculous.
Looks like we're out of time here, but Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley, thanks so much for stopping by today. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.